start with, as I said to you in my email, the TLDR. Tell me about your companies and how they started, not where they are right now, in about 30 seconds. Matt, you can go first.
Yeah. So we provide style and culture for competitive runners. So we craft luxury performance apparel. We publish a quarterly magazine on digital content, and we put on events that allow runners to really indulge in this activity that they deem important to them for an identity perspective or from a lifestyle perspective. So we're sort of the antithesis of athleisure, right? So we're providing an experience and a brand that allow people to go much deeper below the surface, whereas athleisure to me is sort of a surface level opportunity that exists right now, and it's just that, and I think that it will come and go and come back again, because athleisure is actually, it's happened 2 or 3 times in the past. It's just we actually came up with a clever name for it now.
So where do you sell?
We sell almost exclusively online. We are starting to experiment a bit with different retail concepts. We've done some pop-up shops. We've done some online wholesale. And we're going to open a new office space that will be sort of a hybrid showroom and office space and fulfillment center.
Okay, where is that going to be?
Just outside of Boston.
Okay. So. What about you, Aubrie?
I'm Aubrie, one of the founders of Bow & Drape. Bow & Drape, we like to think, is the foremost mass customization brand for millennials. So we allow customers to design and customize lifestyle products, everything from sweatshirts to pet sweatshirts to accessories and homewares, and to put your stamp on it in a really fun way. So we grew up online. We are about 3 years old, and we now are, to answer your question to him, we are now in Nordstrom. We just launched in Nordstrom this past holiday season.
Okay, let's start with you, because the Nordstrom thing is exciting. What was the decision making there like? Because I know about a year ago you spoke to us at the Digiday Retail Summit, and at that point I think you were starting to just think about the Nordstrom deal, right? Yeah. So what was behind that decision of, okay, we need to get into a store? Why Nordstrom? And what was the hardest part of getting that decision?
Yeah, I remember we couldn't announce who it was. So we had this big vision that customization can take retail to the next level. That retail in a lot of ways has an opportunity, especially with younger customers, to be more experiential. And that's not just putting a coffee shop on the 3rd floor. That's like intrinsically in the product and in the experience. How can you make it innovative and give people a reason to be in store? So we have believed since we started that customization can be that in store, and that it's a super experiential thing because it's tactile. It's like you're dealing with all kinds of, it's like you can see my shoes. I have like little French fries on my shoes. It's like you're dealing with little tactile baubles and embellishments and feeling like a designer for a little bit. And so we started shopping it around 2 different retailers to say who believes this the way we do, like who believes that this can be something that's really beneficial in store, really experiential, really fun, and eventually really profitable. And so we talked to a lot of people, and Nordstrom was just the one that, from a brand perspective, really believed in service and experience the way that we did, and we're really forward-thinking partners in terms of the capital and resources that they would put up to try and do it the way that we wanted to.
But if it was so tactile, then why didn't you do it sooner?
If it was so tactile.
Like if the whole decision making is so tactile, because like I remember I have a sweatshirt from you guys, and it's all sequins, and I didn't touch them. I mean, I just ordered it.
Yeah.
But if it is such a tactile decision, how come the physical part of your presence came pretty late?
Oh, because we grew up out of my personal savings, and we started. The barriers to entry online are so low. We were just a couple girls and a guy in Boston with a website. So. With this vision. So it took us a while to kind of build, as I'm sure you've heard from a lot of people, on stage and around, building a brand takes time, and building that promise up takes time. And so it, even if we had all the capital in the world, there was a right time to approach a retailer, a big trusted retailer, about it. And I think it's after we had established that promise with customers that were existing. I think if we came in with a PowerPoint, we're like, we have capital, let's just do this, I don't know that it would have been as successful.
Matt, now that you're sort of dabbling in physical, what is the thing that has surprised you, or what has been the biggest challenge for you at Tracksmith?
Actually, just to sort of piggyback on what Aubrie was saying, I think, with online, the reason a lot of brands are starting there is because it's so much cheaper and it's faster. And it takes away the geographic constraints that a physical store put you in, which is that you really can only reach a certain number of people within that constraint. But what eventually what you want to be able to do, which was what Carl was speaking about yesterday in terms of creating stronger emotional and memory structures, is to Aubrey's point about the tactile and the emotional and sensory things that a physical presence give you. So that's sort of what we're looking at, is how do we create that? And online has its limitations, right? You might be able to, the best you can sort of do is create a very, maybe a film or a video that has beautiful images and video and some great audio. And those two senses combined can be very powerful, but you lose touch, you lose smell, you lose some of those other sensory things. So thinking about how you bring that experience in the store, and then how you can scale that, without quickly getting into trying to open up 10, 20 stores.
Right.
So there's a couple people that have come before us, obviously, Bonobos, for example, that has had a really interesting trajectory of online only, and in fact, kind of, dissing traditional brick-and-mortar retail to opening guide shops, and then landing a large deal with Nordstrom.
Yeah.
So they figured out a very interesting pathway to sort of reach mass market.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best examples, Birchbox always fascinates me, because they were entirely online, and then now they have that great store in Soho, and they're still sort of trying to figure out what really the store is about. I mean, is the store for you a brand building experience? I think you guys have very different expectations from your physical presences. Is yours a little bit more of a brand building exercise right now and less of like a sales channel?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think that younger brands that maybe don't have a legacy of hundreds or thousands of stores out there will start to view it this way. But we perceive a store just as another media platform and another media channel for us, right? If you think about it, you create landing pages for your website for certain campaigns because you want the customer to have a specific experience coming from some campaign. And a store for us is the same. We want people to walk in and have the same experience, or a very sort of controlled experience. So, for us, we're viewing it certainly as a brand building, but also just a media channel. It's another opportunity to try new things and to get different things in front of customers, versus a wholesale model where it's certainly much more of a sales objective.
Are you starting to now deal with all the issues that we were talking about yesterday, like the attribution, where's everything coming from? Things get a lot more complicated now that there's all these places you're in.
Yes, definitely. And we definitely see, wholesale, part of what we feel that, that margin makes up for is that it's as a young brand, a great acquisition channel for us. And so we've definitely tried to build in hooks, through specific URLs and email signups to try and create that picture for ourselves, but it's not a perfect model. But we've seen early signs that it can be a really great, not only media channel for us to get exposure as a young brand, but that it has proven that we can be a really, really great brand. We were the #1 selling brand in all of our departments when we were there, so we were sort of instantly proving the value as a sales channel as well, which I think would, it leads us down the path of experimenting with it further if we can figure out how to maximize value per square foot.
How has it changed how you guys define success, like internally within the organization? Has having the Nordstrom presence affected the way you think about that? I'm sure it's changed some of the metrics you're looking at.
It's this, I don't know if it's changed the metrics in the sense that we still look at it from what's our overall margin, what's our ROI look like, how much did that cost to acquire that person? I think those things at the end of the day don't really change in the whole picture. It's just the inputs, I guess, changed is how we think of it.
Yeah.
And with any strategic initiative too, it's like you do have to put sometimes more effort and resources to something at first, knowing that you're going to test into that and it might not be more, the results are unknown. So I would say in that way, that's the only way we look at it different, is there are certain strategic objectives where we're like, Nordstrom's a great one to test first. Like we're gonna put, we're gonna over-index on training, let's say, to train Nordstrom employees. Like there were some decisions that we made around, how do we over-index to make sure these tests are well documented and well resourced. But other than that, it's like.
What about
it's just
experience though? Because suddenly you have this actual experience that you're dealing with of walking in. And obviously you're within Nordstrom, so you do have this structure, I think, already present in some way. But isn't that suddenly a whole new thing that you're dealing with?
Totally. I mean, it's super fun to think about like how we can conceptualize this thing that didn't exist. So everybody knows what we did was you could come in, design something, and then what we actually did was we made it for you there in about 20 minutes and texted you when it was ready, kind of like a dinner reservation. So designing that experience was something that was sort of like blue sky, like how would this work? And so they're definitely, but I mean, again, at the end of the day, it goes back to like, we tried to track NPS, like kind of like what Nizzy was saying. It was like, did people enjoy that experience? Would they refer to it? I think we tried to tie it all back to the same success metrics, but there were definitely, it made it a lot more, I'd say a lot more fun internally to not just think about how can we manage CPI and Facebook, but like how can we also think about tracking that experience in store.
So but I mean, like, I'm curious about your background because you came from Puma.
Yeah.
So you came from a much bigger brand.
Yeah.
What are some of like the legacy things that you don't have to deal with, but what are the challenges that you think are unique to you?
Yeah, I mean, the legacy challenges they run deep a lot of times. The biggest one, the most obvious one was that you would have the online team competing with the sort of vertical retail team, and then the wholesalers as well. And so there was always this sort of like, not necessarily infighting, but you might, as the brand marketing team, say this is a key style, and the online team, which has separate buyers and merchandisers, might say, yeah, but we don't think it's going to sell that well, so we're not going to buy a lot of it. Or you might buy too much of a particular style, and your sales guys are out there selling it into sporting goods stores, and they're all excited about it, but it doesn't sell well online, so they put it on sale right away, and then you're sitting with a bunch of product in a Foot Locker.
There's a lot of
or someone else.
inventory sort of logistics issues.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So obviously, when you start online and then move to physical, you sort of like you have more control of the steps along the way versus sort of having this very large global brand and then suddenly be thrust upon in this sort of digital world and trying to figure that out, where a lot of the sort of like, it's more the thinking as much as it is any systems or processes that are in place. So I think it's certainly in this day and age, it's quite an advantage to start online. You can control it a lot more and then sort of slowly and gradually expand. And I think for us, the KPIs, although we're digital, really only care about one thing, and that's new customer acquisition. Because I think that, there's so many, we've raised money from VC, so we've gone through that process and talking about average order value and repeat rate and all of those things. But you quickly find that as a young team, you don't have a lot of money, time, or resources. And all of a sudden, you find yourself starting to optimize for these KPIs like revenue per square foot if you're into retail. And I think in the early days, that just takes away the focus of actually brand building. And I think it's really important to lay that foundation first. There's always time for optimization later.
But I mean, we asked Nizzy this earlier too. I mean, it was the brand building versus the e-commerce goals, right?
Yep.
And if you're online only, I mean, those e-commerce goals really are, and especially if you're scrappy, you're nimble, you're small, you're maybe working out of your own savings, I mean, you're gonna have to reach those goals. I mean, how did you prioritize which one you're gonna look at first?
Yeah, I had a slightly different opinion. But I think we're a different type of brand. So we are certainly a long-term, long play brand. And I think that takes a lot of time. And I think that brands that have had a lot of success, like we're seeing Casper right now, or even a Warby Parker, they set unrealistic expectations. And I think there will always be some brands that come in and they just hit on some sort of like perfect storm of maybe they've got some interesting business model that's unique, and so a lot of press gets written about that. And so there's certain things that that sort of inflate, I think, those success stories, and then people try to duplicate that. And so we're just taking a much slower path, and one that we think that actually, although it will take us longer, we'll build a much, much wider foundation on top of which we'll be able to scale and optimize and do all of those things.
Yeah.
So.
But Aubrie, it sounds like you kind of went with, because you talked about brand building, and that was really make sure people were out there and people know us and trust us, because the trust was a big part of talked about that this morning too. Like if you're online, your trust is probably one of your most important things.
Totally. I mean, I guess I ask a lot of my team, but I say, why can't we do both? Like, I think we've been really scrappy and thinking about how can we build a sustainable business model. I mean, we were almost break even last year. And how can we do that whilst telling a really compelling story and giving a really great experience? Like, I don't think that it necessarily has to be like one or the other, and like, it's this giant sacrifice between the two. I think we are in the position that we are in because we had good, sound, like economic structure to the business. Like, I think it, you know, being in New York, we're surrounded by a ton of brands and really creative people. You know, I worked for creative designers who just had the most amazing vision and promise that they wanted to give to the customer, but they ran out of money. Like, that's just the reality, I think, of the you know, retail's a tough business. So I think that you have to have both, but I don't think it's necessarily that you have to sacrifice one for the other. We definitely tried to build both in tandem.
Have you taken VC funding?
We haven't yet.
You haven't? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TBD, but
Let's find out.
for now we haven't.
Let's talk about the too many platforms, too much data thing, because I think that's, again, a little bit, you might have a little bit of a different perspective from Lizzie there as well. What kind of platforms work for you? And maybe not paid social, but social.
Yeah.
What works, what doesn't, and what is actually, again, back to the performance metrics, what are you actually looking for?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly a challenge, I think, for any online company. There's a wealth of data, and frankly, you know, our team is quite small, and we don't have experts in some of the areas that larger brands have the ability to invest in those things. So we actually, for a digital-first brand, we surprisingly are probably quite unsophisticated when it comes to platforms and analytics. We do sort of the basics, and we have some checks that we look at. But like I mentioned, I think new customer acquisition is the primary thing. I mean, we'll actually experiment with some paid advertising this year. We haven't for the first year and a half. So we're looking at some of the different channels that are, you know, there. But we'll look for a combination of sort of brand building advertising as well as some sort of direct response. So we're not like going to do.
And you have a content arm too.
We do.
How
yeah.
many people?
Really, it's one person full-time
Okay.
that's head of content. He's the editor of our magazine, and then we source stories, photos, illustrators, and we're just sort of building out the digital footprint.
Is the magazine online only, or is that a print?
It's actually print.
It's a print magazine.
Yeah. So we're
Okay.
starting to expand the digital footprint of it, but really it's a brand building piece, and to some extent it's a bit of a Trojan horse for us because there is this network of specialty running stores that exist, and so it provides us a platform to start to build relationships with them and customers. If they have the magazine in their hands, they're going to know it's ours, and then it also allows us to figure out sort of like what retailers might be good partners for us down the road. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Print is alive. Makes me feel better.
Yeah.
What about you guys in terms of content? Where's your content piece?
Our content is, we have 2 people on the team just focus on creation, and then we have 1 person just focus on distribution. And I think we built the business for data and content very scrappy, just given the nature of how we were funded. So we've had to figure out how to do these things really efficiently. And so, you know, from very early on, we had to have a good handle on our metrics because every month it was like, okay, we have X amount in the bank. Like, how are we going to make this go 1 more month? And so that's definitely how we've built the sort of data side, is that we actually feel like we have a pretty good handle on our data just because we haven't made decisions unless they could be measurable and unless they, you know, they could necessarily move us forward. We've had to take really calculated risks as a result of our capital structure. And then as far as content, we try to do, you know, we use a lot of, we use a mix of our own sort of art direction, but then we also take a lot from our community. So our community is, the brand is all about being really fun and cheeky and having lots of personality. And so we have a lot of really great women out there. Like, if you're attracted to a brand that's about that, you usually have a big personality yourself. So we have lots of customers that have really great content that we try to leverage, and we use them. You know, we're doing a photo shoot in a couple weeks with like 4 or 5 of our, you know, influencers in New York in their own designed, customized gear. So we really try to leverage content that feels really true to the brand.
But it's mostly user generated.
But it's a lot of user generated, and then we do scalable photo shoots.
Super different approaches though.
Yeah,
for both
because
of
I
you.
mean, because what we've even seen is if we, it's like on model doesn't necessarily even convert better
Yeah.
than just shooting a still of it on the ground. So it's like, well, why don't we just do it on the ground? That's cheaper. Like, I mean, that's the culture that we've built in the business is just like, what's going to work?
Awesome.
Yeah.
We have literally maybe 30 seconds if there's a question. Any questions? No questions? Oh, there's one over there? Okay.
Thinking about email as a channel and then maybe more atypical like print catalogs, you know, considering that you're looking at brick and mortar and things like that.
Go first.
Sure. Email is definitely one of our best channels. So we've done a lot to convert people already on site, and then we've also done a lot of co-marketing initiatives to build our email lists. And then, as I said, with some of our retailers, we're using our technology in store as an email acquisition channel. And then print, I mean, never say never, but because customization is all about it being this kind of dynamic thing, I think we would have to figure out how print would work for that medium. Because typical catalog is just you kind of see the look and you buy it. So we'd have to figure out some ingenious way to translate customization into that. So no media plans.
And you love print.
We do. Yeah, I mean, email is very important for us as well, and I think we're just sort of scratching the surface on what we can do there because we do produce so much content and because we're in a category where people are actually partaking in this activity versus just trying to sell a pair of khakis or a pair of glasses. Print, it's interesting. Obviously, a lot of brands have gone to catalogs. You probably got a million this holiday season. We were going to do a traditional catalog, and instead we did an insert in Monocle magazine. So we sort of made the decision that within Monocle, it's a bit more of a brand building opportunity, not as trackable as catalogs, because catalogs are quite sophisticated now in terms of being able to track and target different audiences. So we just sort of decided to take a slightly different approach on catalog this holiday season, and we were very pleased with how that went. So
Great, awesome. Well, we're out of time, but thank you guys so much. This is
thank
great.
you.
Okay. So we're about to break for coffee, but before that, we have a bingo winner. It is Josh from